business development program here at Elevate. This time we will be discussing business goals. Now, today we're joined by Amy Patrick of Amy Patrick Collaborations, and we are going to be discussing business goals and what that really means and how these are affected by your business. So why don't we start by looking at what really is a business goal? What would you consider a good definition for a business goal?
Well, that's funny. I was actually going to look that up. I really like etymology, and I forgot to do that, but that's okay. I think goals are just basically your direction. They're your compass.
I agree 100% with that. I mean, we don't have to complicate what the purpose of a goal is. It's just to help us find that next step, find that movement forward.
Right.
Because that's really what we want to do.
Right.
So when we're looking at business goals, what's something you recommend for helping us set a clear and specific goal?
Absolutely. Well, the industry standard is to use SMART goals, and that's the acronym SMART for specific, measurable, attainable, and time-bound. I think I got that right.
Yeah, that was it.
But so that's a good one to always start with if you're new to goal planning, or just to kind of get the basics down. Is to even just do some research on what is a SMART goal. There's a lot of resources out there that can help you with that, and that will help you make sure that you have a good statement for your goal and get you on the right track. But there's actually about 10 good solid frameworks out there for goal setting. And I'm not an expert on each of them, but I was looking at them yesterday, as a matter of fact. And so depending on what it is that you're wanting to do, are you just looking short term? Are you looking long term? Are you just looking at a project? Are you looking at something full scale? That'll determine which framework to use. And so another thing to educate yourself on would be goal setting frameworks, and find the one that works best for you.
So we're looking at, truthfully, for what I'm thinking, is we're looking at, we're coming to the end of the year.
Yeah.
And a lot of businesses and organizations are getting together now to set next year's budget, next year's goals, next year's key performance indicators or KPIs. And I think that's one area we really need to discuss about how do KPIs and goals link to each other.
Oh yeah, absolutely, Jason. So your KPIs are kind of your, they tell you where you're at with your goal. Are you meeting it or not? And so what I like to do, once I've set a goal and I've got it written the way that I want it, then I start to say, how am I measuring this? And I'd like to integrate that into the culture, or into all of my meetings and things like that. So it's the goal itself. The goal statement tells you the what do we want to do, and the KPIs are telling you how are we doing that, and how are we going to get there. So excuse me, it's kind of like your enabling objective is really what it is. It's like this is ultimately where we want to be, how we're going to get there, and those are your measurements. And so you want to be watching those every meeting, all throughout the year. Set up times to be looking at those. I
love that you mentioned that we should be looking at these all the time.
Yes.
I know for a lot of the businesses I've worked with, and for when I was working in corporate America, KPIs were something we usually checked, if we're lucky, once a quarter. But to be honest, they weren't really looked at until the end of the year by anybody.
Okay.
So looking at them and keeping that in mind as we're aiming towards a goal is very helpful in actually reaching that goal.
Absolutely.
Now, a lot of people talk about how that goal is measured with your KPIs, but there are other ways to measure goals, and it doesn't have to be a specific KPI. What other ways have you seen that really focus in on that measurement of a goal?
Absolutely. Well, I think it's going to be very goal specific. It's going to depend. And some people are looking at, customer satisfaction. So then you're looking at, even if you don't set it as a KPI, you might be looking at evaluating your customer score. Send an evaluation out to your customers and say, how are we doing? And in that case, if you want to get effective information back, you want to study the methodologies of how to send out evaluations. So that's one way. Off the the top of my head, I'm not sure. What were you
So
thinking?
for me, I was thinking, oftentimes I would recommend for people to look at educational goals.
Sure.
So maybe, okay, our goal is to get 6 people trained this year.
Mm-hmm.
We got 5 done.
Sure.
Not a hard number to look at. You can easily connect those informations, and it's not having to do a large statistical analysis
Right.
or gather a lot of data when you can say, okay, I've sent 4 people to this program, I want to send 2 more.
Absolutely. I actually had a conversation very recently with someone that she's an expert in SWOT analysis,
Okay.
so strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. And she was telling me that a lot of the industry is starting to get away from SWOT analysis.
It is.
I was very surprised to hear that. She said that from what she's understanding is they're thinking that it takes too long, and so they're trying to do, they're doing different approaches to that. And she and we discussed that that's something that really doesn't have to take
Right.
that long. So if they're thinking that it's taking too long and it's not value added, then that's a time to kind of look back at how are we doing that, and is there a different way to do it? Because
So true.
doing that SWOT, especially when you're doing your goal development, it's very key to that. And so to your point about the educational goals, KPIs don't have to be huge. They don't have to be time consuming.
Right.
So if that is your hang up, is we're not doing this because it takes too much time or it's not value added, then it may be something that you just need to reevaluate how you're doing that.
Right.
And is there a different way that is more lean or more effective?
Now, going back to our time frame a little bit there, we talked about checking them on a regular basis.
Yeah.
How often would you recommend that we do go back and review those goals,
Mm-hmm.
just to make sure we're moving forward in them, or do we need to change it?
Right, absolutely. Well, I think that one of the key things there when you're developing your goals and you set that time bound is that you also you implement action plans, and within that action plan you talk about sustainment, and you are going to decide that's going to be different for every goal, depending on what that is. So for me to say, well, every single staff meeting or every single day or every single week is a little bit difficult,
Right.
depending on the goal. But what I like to do is I align everything with my mission and my vision. So even with the goals, as I look at, that's my key part, is I say, okay, well, what is my mission? What is my vision? How am I reaching that? And that's how I set my goals. From that point on, then I talked about weaving that into the organization. So departmentally, I worked for a company before where the strategic goals would come out from administration, and then in the department we went back and we said, okay, this is what the administration wants to do for the company. Now, how does our department affect that? Once we set our goals for the department and everything was aligned, then we took our agendas for
Mm-hmm.
our monthly meetings, and our agendas were actually built from those goals.
Wonderful.
Because those are the things that we need to be talking
Right.
about. And everything needs to point back to, everything that we do needs to be pointing back to our goals, our mission, our vision. Otherwise, we need to be asking ourselves, why are we doing this?
Right.
Because it could be a time waster, or there's no reason to do it. So I create my agendas based on those goals.
Okay.
That's what we need to be talking about.
I love there that you mentioned that your goal reached back to a strategic goal that was
Mm-hmm.
put out by corporate.
Absolutely.
I know in my experience, a lot of times as you're given those strategic goals from corporate, you don't really have any input in them.
Mm-hmm.
They went off to a 2-day summit
Sure.
and developed those goals, and now they've pushed those goals out for you.
Mm-hmm.
And your business, your department, your section might not always relate easily to that goal.
Sure.
So it's very important as someone who's done that before to relate that not only to your department, but also to those people around you.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things that I've always encouraged is that each individual helps set goals for their own personal growth.
Absolutely.
Within that process.
Mm-hmm.
But what is something that you would do to help encourage everybody to be able to connect more to those goals?
Well, that comes down to leadership, and it's a lot of what you talked about. So not only does the department then set their goals, then I think you kind of hit the nail on the head with your each of your employees, because they should be setting goals. So annual evaluations will come up, and you should be encouraging your employees to set goals, and that should just kind of stack right on top of each other. So each of your employees should be looking at it, going, well, these are my goals for this year, and my goals help the department reach their goals. The department helps the organization reach their goals. What happens then, and when you involve your frontline staff like that, is they start to see their value. They understand how they contribute to the greater mission of the organization, and they start seeing the value in the work that they do. So we're really starting to build a culture, a positive culture at that point. Now, small businesses, may not have this corporate structure that you and I are talking about, right?
Exactly.
So in those cases, I still have, I run a small business, and so I would still have strategic, once a year we have our strategic planning meeting, even just with my small amount of staff, but we go back and we look at the business plan. Mm-hmm. So we may not have a full strategic plan coming down from corporate, but we go back and we look at the business plan. And so at the same time of doing goals, we're also getting back out that business plan. Are we in alignment? Where do we want to go? And at that point, I give my team an opportunity to say, what are your goals? What is your vision? Where do you want to see the company going? And all of that just builds all of that in. And then you're constantly talking about that. And you can build your reward and recognition systems off of that. And everything should stem from that. So
I love the fact that you brought that back to the small businesses, because a lot of small businesses do struggle with looking at goal beyond the financial side.
Oh yeah.
And financial side is a huge goal.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, yes, we all want to be making, $1 million every year. Not realistic, but it is something we want to be doing.
I just want to be retired on a beach with margaritas, hey, and then I'm good, right?
That could be fun too.
And let the company just run itself.
The company just runs itself. But
whatever that takes. That's my
you
goal.
have to set up those goals beforehand to help build that process.
Absolutely.
So what is something that you could recommend for small businesses or large corporations to really look at when they're setting their first big goal beyond just that financial goal, mm-hmm. or maybe even with that financial goal?
Well, I think that if that's a key driver there is I have this financial goal. Okay, I want to make $1 million. All right, how are you going to do that? Mm-hmm. And so we start to look at the how, not just the what, because I want to make $1 million, that's a what.
Yes.
Now we need to start looking at the hows. So if that's for instance, in this instance, that's the only goal I can come up with, then I start saying, okay, how am I going to do that? That's when the brainstorm is going to kick in, and that's when your other goals are going to start driving things. And so what we call that is, in this example, we call that a terminal goal or a terminal objective, right. Which means when I get there, I know I've succeeded. I'm done. When I get there, I can go to the beach. And then everything else becomes enabling. How are you going to enable that to happen? And just have your brainstorming sessions, network with other people. I know here in this area we have the Mattoon Area Business Networking Group that meets once a month. And so if you're not familiar with that, you can just search that on Facebook, and we can get you connected there. And because what we've found is that a lot of small business owners, we don't have a lot of people to collaborate with.
Exactly.
So I know you and I, when we get together, we do a lot of collaboration. And so that's, find groups of people that you can collaborate with, talk about, hey, how am I going to reach this, and then set your goals from there.
See, that was the one thing I would definitely recommend for all small businesses. Don't think you have to do it alone. Mm-hmm. You want to do it alone, and I understand that, but you don't have all the knowledge underneath the sun. So you need to bring in other ideas, other concepts, talk to people. You don't have to pay them most of the time. Just take somebody out to lunch,
right.
Take someone out to dinner, ask some questions over dinner and say, hey, I want to pick your brain. Talk to your accountant if you have one, your marketing people. Mm-hmm. Those people are going to give you some information that you probably don't have as you're starting to set next year's goals.
Absolutely. We actually, when you talk about free resources and things like that, I'm so excited. We have our SBDC that's going to be, that's opening up here right at Elevate, or if you're not in this area, look for your local SBDC, which is their Small Business Development Center, because they offer a lot of free resources and education and training and just simple consulting to help you take a look at things. And so that, I know I've gone twice now to speak with our most local SBDC, and they were absolutely instrumental in helping me just develop my business plan.
Right.
So that's a free resource out there where you get experts in the field that can help you with that.
So as we look back at goals and looking at goals in general, oftentimes people, you mentioned it, that we kind of had that terminal goal. We're going to get $1 million. Oftentimes we might hit a goal mid-year. How do we not get stuck at that mid-year? Because I know for a lot of organizations, a lot of businesses, they hit a goal, they stop. They stop looking at what's next. How do we make sure that we've not hit a goal, which is great, celebrate hitting the goal, but we don't stop mid-year and go, well, I'm done, I've hit my goal?
I think it's going to be individual to everyone. So, in some cases that might be like, we're going to reach this goal by first quarter. So you may have some quarterly goals that you have, and so within your time bound and your action planning, that may be acceptable. But if you've reached every goal, then just depending on, are you corporate or are you small business, and you need to stop and ask yourself, am I happy right now? Is this where I want to be? And in some cases, I know for me, small business wise, I might be okay like just being level at that point. This is where I want to be, and I don't want to add any more to my plate right now, but I'm going to reevaluate it when it's time for goal planning and see where do we want to go. In other cases, that's where you start talking to your leadership team or others is what's next? What has come up? Do we need to put something else in here? You can do some gap analysis. You can, a huge part of reaching your goals is sustainment. And so you really need to start asking yourself, how are we going to sustain this? Yes, we met it. How are we sustaining it? How are we going to keep it there? So if your goal was, I want to have 30 new clients this year, and you've reached that halfway through, then how am I going to sustain those clients? Am I keeping them happy?
Right.
And so that's one thing is you don't have to necessarily set a whole brand new goal that's separate of it. It's not, okay, let's see if we can get 30 more. You might want to do that. Depends on your organization. But I think the other thing is go back and reevaluate. Is everything good? Is it perfect the way you want it with that goal? And are there things that you need to do for
Wonderful. That? So on the final subject I thought we could talk about is individual goals. So when I was working in corporate America, one of the things that a lot of individuals that reported to me or reported to other leaders was that they did not like setting goals.
That's a tough sell sometimes. It really is, because a lot of it comes down to culture, and it comes down into leadership, and how are they, managing that. I can tell you that if for your individuals, if goals are something that we only talk about once a year, and you set these goals, and maybe it's you have to meet you have to do this many parts per hour. If we're talking manufacturing, that type of thing. If I don't see how that I'm contributing to the bigger picture overall, then I'm not seeing value in that. And so it goes beyond just telling someone, well, this is why you want to set your goals, because it can't just be a flavor of the month. It has to be, they have to live it and they have to breathe it. And so it's not just one meeting where I'm going to sit down and say, hey, this is why we're doing this. To be honest, what I encourage organizations to do is start right in your orientation. Your employees should see the entire process of your organization and where they fit into the bigger picture, and then go from there. And it's really just more about that constant conversation. And I think if you set that tone, and once they see that this isn't just a place where I just come in, I clock in, and I get a paycheck and I leave, but they see that they're actually appreciated, and they actually are part of the bigger process, and their input matters. They're a person, then you're not going to have that individual conversation of why do your goals matter. They should already be feeling that should already be set up within the organization. So that's just kind of where I start with that, because I don't know if that's, I've had conversations with employees before, frontline employees, about the importance of their goals, and they set them, but it's not being, lived and breathed.
Lived and breathed, yes.
So they go back to work and things don't happen. Well,
right.
Then it's just my words for nothing and
right.
lies in a sense. So.
Yes. So the thing that I often do is similar to the way you described it. I relate that to how they want to continue to advance and develop within the company.
Sure.
Because our goals should be related to what you want to do within the company. So if you want to be president of the company, congratulations, we're going to help you get there. If you want to go off and start your own business in 3 years, great. How can we help you get there? That should be our purpose as an organization, as a business, to try to help develop our people. So I gave recommendations for 3 things. I said, when you set a goal for yourself, you should look at 3 things. What is going to help? A goal that helps the company or the organization, a goal that helps you develop within the organization,
sure.
And then a goal to help you develop. So as an example, I would say, I worked in a lab a lot, I would say, what are you going to do to make the lab function better? And oftentimes they would say, oh, okay, I'm going to review 4 SOPs every month. Wonderful. How are you going to create something that is going to help you develop? I would like to attend a training on this piece of equipment. Wonderful. How can I help you get there?
I like it.
And then the third is, how do you develop yourself? And that could be something, well, I need to work on my anger management a little bit. So I'm going to meet with a couple people to figure out how to control my anger. That's great. There's 3 opportunities. Yep. Some of them are more affected to the company and some of them aren't. But overall, they help that person, individual, grow and develop to become a better employee, a more productive member of society. And ultimately, if we help them to grow and understand that growth, they can relate and help us grow as well.
Sure. I have a funny story.
Okay.
I had a leader that I worked for many years. And he's my mentor, absolutely wonderful, wonderful leader. But he had it in his mind that a lot of his employees their goal was to become a director within the organization. And so a lot of times during the annual evaluations, that's kind of where the conversation would go, like, well, if you want to be a director, you need to do this and this. And I looked at him one time and I said, I have no desire whatsoever to be a director. This is not motivating me. I had actually reached where I was at, unless something, and a different opportunity opened up. But at that time, I said, I'm good right where I'm at.
Right.
And I left him a little bit speechless, which he's never speechless, but I think that I left him speechless a few times. But I think that, it also comes down to knowing your employees and talking to them about, what is it that you want,
right,
and where do you see yourself. And there was a challenging time in my career when I had reached a level where I was happy, I was content. This is where I'm at, and so I just want to, but there were things that I wanted to do, because I wanted to start mentoring other people to bring them up to my level of knowledge, or different things like that. And once he and I figured that out, we were able to we implemented some different programs, and it was innovative, and it kept me happy in my professional life, and so my goals were there. But it was funny, the look on his face when I said, that's not a goal, I don't want to be a director, because I didn't at that time. To be a director, you had to have a lot of employees to be responsible for. They just
don't want to do that. Yeah,
there's no job satisfaction there for me.
Understand. So the final thing I think we should talk about is what happens when, unfortunately, you don't hit the goal.
Yeah.
And that happens a lot. It happens a lot in every organization, every business, where we don't hit, because I can't hit $1 million every year.
Right.
Doesn't happen. I'm not going to make it this year, so I'm done. Just close everything up and go home.
Yeah.
How do we respond when we don't hit a goal?
Yeah. Well, if you're looking at them on a regular basis, it shouldn't come as a surprise. Things are going to happen, and you're going to have to pivot and shift gears. And not reaching a goal isn't always a negative thing.
Right.
right? It could just be that, the market may have changed. You had to pivot for, various reasons, and maybe there's a different positive outcome that came from that. Sometimes when we set our goals, we don't have all of the information. 6 months from now, we may have new information. Think about when COVID hit.
Yes.
In that surprise, things are going to happen, and you're going to have to pivot and shift gears. And not reaching a goal isn't always a negative thing, right? It could just be that the market may have changed. You had to pivot for various reasons, and maybe there's a different positive outcome that came from that. Sometimes when we set our goals, we don't have all of the information. 6 months from now, we may have new information. Think about when COVID hit.
Yes.
And that was right at the time that most people had done their strategic plan.
Exactly.
Talk about a pivot. So not meeting your goal is an opportunity for you to look at lessons learned and what can we do with that. It's a time to look at how do we set a new goal? Where do we go from here?
Mm-hmm.
You're also going to want to go back and evaluate the why. Sometimes we think we know why we didn't meet that goal.
Okay.
Lean Six Sigma has a tool that they use called the 5 Whys.
Yep.
It's one of my favorite activities, and it's simple. It's not anything you have to really teach in depth, and you just you start with asking the question, why?
Yeah.
Why didn't I meet that goal? And whatever that answer is then you say, why? Almost like a 3-year-old, right?
Yes.
But until you get down to the root cause of that, and then you're going to make your executive decision. You're a leader, and figure out where to go.
One of the things that I've worked with leaders over the last few years is they don't want to shift. They realize that they're not going to hit the goal, and they shut down.
Okay.
They don't take that moment to learn or to ask the whys.
Right.
What is something that you've seen or maybe you've done that helps bring them back out of that, hey, I'm not going to hit this goal, I'm going to shut down now, which means everything ends?
Yeah.
And in a business and an organization, that is detrimental to the growth of any organization.
Sure.
So how do we help a leader come out of that?
So I think it's twofold. One is making sure that you have a diversified team. And by diversified team, I mean that you've got different thinkers.
Okay.
Because the ones that are going to shut down like that are specific personality types and or thinking styles. And so you've got some people that are so caught in their particular thinking style that they can't see outside of the box. And so you need somebody to come in who can think differently than you. So one is collaborate with different styles of thinking, different personalities. So make sure your team is diversified enough in that so that you've got people that can help you get through that point. The other piece is, and this is a lot of what we focus on with our strategic coaching and planning, is providing clarity. So a lot of times, and I have one particular client in mind that he's just a very much, this is the way I see it, and if that doesn't happen, then yeah, I'm going to shut down. And it's not a weakness, because there's a lot of strength in the way that he thinks. But sometimes all you have to do is show them the roadmap and say, okay, well, I think we can get there, but it might not look the way you thought it was going to look. And so we help them, brainstorm that roadmap, or you talk about that pivoting, like what parts of the goal can we meet, or what do we do now? And so that requires, more right-minded thinking sometimes to get that, that brainstorm in there. But that's the big thing that I think it's just, again, going back to, you don't have to do it alone. Don't ever try to. You're always going to get a better result with a more diversified.
Yeah. When I coach an individual like that, I always focus more on, yes, we're not hitting that goal. That's okay. We acknowledge that we're not going to hit it. Because that takes in and of itself a huge step for a lot of people.
Sure.
Just acknowledging that we're not going to be able to do something. And then we look at why, we start looking at the whys we're not going to meet it, without blame. Because it's not about blaming.
Right.
It's not about blaming you because we didn't hit this goal.
Yeah.
It's about blame. It's not about blame. It's about, okay, let's find out where we had an issue and what that resulted in, and then how can we revise that goal?
Sure.
Because we might know, hopefully, if we're doing our due diligence and monitoring it yearly, we'll know about mid-year, hey, this goal seems to be a little farther down the line. we might have to readjust that goal
Sure.
and make it a 2-year goal instead of a 1-year goal.
Right. Yeah, it may not have been realistic or something
Mhm.
like that because of unknowns. So, yeah, I think all of that is very helpful in, you talked about without blame.
Yes.
And, there's a saying of, it's not a process problem, it's not a people problem. It's never a people problem, it's a person problem, it's always a process problem.
Right.
And I agree with that to a point.
Yeah.
Maybe
Sometimes.
95% of the time, roughly, I can identify it as a process problem, but there are times when, if somebody's just not going to do it, but if we go with the 80-20 rule, let's do
Okay.
that, then we can say that, let's look at the processes. But going back to that, why we're not meeting it. The other thing that I like is that don't take it personal.
Yes.
Look at it as, when you start asking that, why are we not meeting that goal? It may not be a personal thing for you, and so having that conversation with your leader helps them to depersonalize it, so they're not feeling so defeated.
Right.
And again, and it comes down to that road mapping. When they get that, I call it the light bulb moment.
Okay.
So when that light bulb goes off and they say, "Oh, okay, I get it now. I can see this, and I can see the way out of the jungle here."
Right.
It definitely changes their motivation, their perspective, and just their entire outlook on things. So
Wonderful.
very helpful.
So as we end our day here
Yes.
today, I was wondering if you, as a business leader,
Sure.
as a small business owner, what would be one thing you would tell any business on goal setting that they need to be doing for the next year?
Absolutely. So I'm a firm believer in value-based decision-making and informed decision-making. So I think that when you do set your goals, and we talked about this a little bit, is going back to your mission and your vision, look at your values, and determine that everything is in alignment. That's the key right there. I used to have a quote statement on my computer and a couple of other places that said, is the activity you're doing right now helping you to reach your goal, your ultimate goal? Because again, if we're not in alignment, then we're wasting our time.
Wonderful. Thank you very much, Amy. It's a pleasure having you here.
Thank
Great.
you.
So that's our talk for today. Business goals, they are something you should be setting, you should be growing with. Make sure you are looking at them with your vision, your mission, your values in line, and understand that as you move forward, you need to make sure, how are you measuring it? What was the purpose of that goal? And does it need to be adjusted or revised in time or purpose so that you can make sure you're meeting your goals? Hope you'll join us next time for our business development program. We'll talk to you next month. Thank you very much. Have a nice night.